All right, welcome to Mike's Real Estate Podcast. Today I have Jay Thompson, the man, the myth, the legend. Welcome.
Thanks, Mike. It's good to be here.
So you originally, when I met you, Phoenix Real Estate guy, the
Yep.
blog,
Yep.
the blog, one of the first bloggers that I think hit national attention as far as I knew. When did you start that?
That started in I have to think. It's been a long time. I got my brokerage license in 2000. It started in 2006, 2007.
Oh, wow.
It's
So
been
you
a
started
long,
right away, huh?
yeah, pretty much. Well, I got licensed in 2004 and started the blog a couple of years after that. So it's been a long time.
And I know you have your Now Pondering site. You're just a natural writer. You gravitate towards that.
Yeah, and that's basically why I started the blog. Back then, blogs were kind of the personal journal type of site more than anything else.
Yeah.
And I've always been a writer. It's just something that oddly enough, I need to write, which I get. Some people would rather slit their wrists than sit at a keyboard and write, but I've always loved it. I mean, even when I was a little kid, in school, when the teacher would say 500-word essay due, I'd go up to the front and say, "Is it all right if I write 1,000 words?" um,
Everyone's looking, stop it.
Yeah, it's like, what's wrong with that guy? But that's just the way it is. So I took that need and that love of writing, and I thought, well, I love and want and need to write, and I've got to prospect and build a real estate business. So maybe there's a way to marry those two things, and the blog seemed to be the natural platform. There was a couple people, not, I wasn't the first, but it was hard back then to find a real estate blog. You really had to look for one. And it took a ton of experimentation, but it all turned out really, really well.
How much of your business do you think came from that blog, as far as, because I know a lot of agents came across you, and so you got referrals. And
Yep. Tons of referrals. There was a point where honestly, probably 80% of our business was generated by that blog. Our being me and my wife were both agents at the time. And it was really the impetus for starting my brokerage, Thompson's Realty, because we were getting so many leads from it. I was literally leads were just sitting there. I didn't have time or bandwidth to handle them all. So we thought, well, we'd always kind of wanted to start our own brokerage. So we said, if we start a brokerage, we could get a couple agents that we could pass some of these leads off to and see what they could do with them. And that's what we did.
So you were one of the first person that I heard that was talking about forced registration. And I agree with your philosophy. What is your philosophy?
That is one thing that I went back and forth on so many times. And I was fortunate that the blog had enough traffic to where I could actually fairly reasonably test how forced or unforced registration did. Personally, I kind of want the internet to be free. Data wants to be free. People want the data to be free. I have always struggled when I go to a website and they want my name, phone number, email, birth date, firstborn child, just to proceed to the next screen to see stuff. So my gut told me, nope, I'm going to put my home search out there on the internet and let people just search till their heart's content and only register when they want to. What basically it boils down to is lead quality over quantity. And I found that letting people register when they want to gives you better leads, better meaning the person's more likely to respond to you, more likely to reply when you reach out. They're not one of those dead leads that never does anything. So you get better quality leads if you don't force registration. There's no doubt that if you force registration, you probably get a higher quantity of leads. So it's that balancing act. And what I wound up doing, philosophically, I want the data to be free. I don't want anybody to have to register. But to get a little bit of the best of both worlds, what I wound up doing was setting my IDX system to display several listings for free before the registration box pops up. And even then, the registration box had an X out on it where the astute internet surfer knew they could probably just close that box and keep on surfing listings. So it was kind of a halfway point to have, I can't remember what I did. I tested, I think I let people view something like 5 full listings before the registration box would pop up. But the important thing that I found, and for your listeners, because I know your target here is real estate agents, the important thing is if you decide to have registration for home search, you need to let people understand why they're registering, what they're going to get for registering. And it's, yes, they're going to get probably put on your drip email system. They're going to get bugged by you because that's what real estate agents do. But if you can help the site user understand, hey, look, we can send you listings as soon as they're put on the MLS. To do that, clearly we have to have a way to send you the listing, i.e. your email address. So I set my registration to pop up with some text in it that would say, yes, I'm asking for your email address, and here's why, A, B, C, and D. This is what you get by providing your real estate or your email address. And this is what I get by you providing your real estate or your email address. So to make a long rambling story short, I wound up kind of with a modified forced registration after a certain number of views, which gives me, I think at the time, kind of the best of quantity and quality of lead. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, that does. And because I think it's a weird thing in real estate, and I often equate it to being like in middle school where you like a girl, but you don't want to find out if she likes you, the Schrodinger's cat kind of thing.
Yep.
You're like, hey, I got this lead. I hope you like me. Here's, and we don't want to just come out and say, hey, this is what it is, and this is why I'm doing it. And it's just that up front, we're scared to just be like,
it's hard to do. It's really hard to do. It kind of goes against your basic human nature, and nobody wants to be that guy, that's bugging people. But I found that people really understood it. Now, of course, I got, the registrations, Mickey Mouse at Disney.com, bite me at gmail.com, all those, and some that I can't repeat on open air.
Yeah.
And that comes with the territory. And I see agents online, they're like, oh, these leads are crap. I keep getting all these fake leads. Well, throw the fake leads away and focus on the real stuff. That's all you really have to do. But I found letting people know what they were getting and what I was getting, and I think that's the point that a lot of agents miss. I think it's okay, it's good, in fact, to let the consumer know not just what's in it for them, but what's in it for us on the other side. I think they appreciate that honesty and that upfrontness.
Well, one of my friends, they just say, yeah, I'm getting your email and I'm going to spam you. Like, that's what we do. And
it is what it is. And most people would accept that. It's still years later, it blows me away, though, how many times I would get an email or a phone call and people like, hey, Jay, it's Mike. And I really appreciate all the listings you've been sending me. And I'm going, Mike, who is this person? And I look through the back end of my IDX system, and Mike or whoever has been searching on the site, going onto the site every week or so for the last 2.5 years and looking at listings. And I did a horrible job converting leads. I just was not a good lead converter. I was a good lead generator, but not a good lead converter. What I should have been doing was looking at the back end of my system, and I should have been seeing Mike before he reached out to me after 2.5 years. I should have been seeing this guy that's been searching every week, week after week after week, and reached out and tried to help him. But I just let the thing go on autopilot, and it works. And I think it still works. There's that argument, can you have a website today as an individual agent or even a small brokerage and compete with Zillow and Realtor.com and the big giant portal sites? And I think you absolutely can. It takes a ton of work to do it, but you absolutely can.
I think that's where, you hear a lot of people talking about the neighborhood sites and going hyper local. Cause I started my blog around the time you did. I did not put as much effort in, not as clearly as good of a writer, but, for my local area, I could show up on the first page for some things. But then when Realtor, Zillow, Redfin, and all these other ones where they figured out how to just really use that IDX and take over that first page, like I was building single sites for my listings. And I was getting them started before the listing even went live, thinking, okay, this will help me. It's the first time this has been connected. And it wouldn't even show up on the first page, and I quit doing those because it wasn't helping.
Yeah, single property sites have always been interested, and I think they do far more appeasing of the seller than they do anything else. Because unless you throw a ton of pay-per-click dollars at it, they're just never going to rank.
Yeah.
Some sellers like them. They go, ooh, look at my house on the fancy website. And sometimes you have to appease seller. I wrote an article years ago about appeasing the seller, and the way to appease the seller is to sell their house. But that gets into, will you hold my house open? Will you do a single property website? And there's a lot of energy and time that's spent by agents on those tasks just to appease the seller. And again, the way to truly appease the seller is to sell their home. So,
well, that's really our fault.
That's
our fault because we've positioned ourselves that this is our value. We'll do open houses and we'll do these things. And the dirty secret is open houses do not sell the house. They help agents get listings. The videos that we want to make for a listing don't help sell almost none of that stuff does. What it is the outward marketing. It is the price. It is helping them with the condition, those different things. But a lot of those things that look like they help don't.
100%. 100%.
But we've caused that, which is, we'll talk about Zillow in a little while, but this is where we've kind of hurt our value as agents. Was back in the day, I have the information. You want that information? You come to me because we have a little book.
Yep.
And then I remember not long after I got started that there was this argument about whether or not to show addresses online. Like, no. And then finally someone's like, look, we have a map. They can tell where it is for the most part.
Right.
So we added addresses. And then I was on the tech committee for our local MLS. And at one point we had like 20 people. It was insane. And I almost quit, but Dale Chumbley talked me into staying a little bit longer because he's good at cut it down. But yeah, he's good. But there was someone, we were talking about having a public field where you could upload a PDF about, I don't know, features or whatever.
Right.
And this woman says, if they want that, they need to come to me. And I'm like, really? That's your value, holding a PDF of something?
Right.
And this is where a lot of people are like, they're afraid of millennials. They're like, well, they're just going to go buy the home on their self. Well, when we've been positioning ourselves as our value is finding the home, that's not even the hard work.
No.
But it used to be part of the job. The real work is the negotiation, is protecting them and all that other stuff. And we've just been going the wrong direction on how we're promoting ourselves.
I agree completely.
So speaking of Zillow, you took a job with Zillow.
I did.
You became the Zillow guy.
I went from the Phoenix real estate guy to the Zillow guy.
How did that happen?
I think it's kind of a cool story. I used to, on my blog, I wrote about Zillow frequently because Zillow launched in 2006. In fact, it was just a few days ago. They celebrated their 14th birthday. So they launched about the same time that I was doing the blog, and that was a big subject of discussion in the real estate space. Zillow gave me something to write about. So I wrote about them frequently, and the vast majority of what I wrote about Zillow was quite positive. I was a fan. I'm like, here's a site that lets me put my listings on it for free, that's going to expose them to the world. I, as an agent, didn't have a problem with it. So I was a Zillow fanboy, much to the chagrin of many agents, but I always liked them. So I wrote about them frequently, or fairly often. I met a lot of the people at Zillow through those writings. And fast forward several years, Zillow hired the CEO of my MLS at the time. So I was in Phoenix, Arizona. Zillow hired my MLS CEO. I was on my MLS tech committee, so I knew Bob Bemis pretty well. So I wanted to write an article for my blog about Bob, the armless CEO, going to Zillow. So I interviewed Bob. I'm not a journalist. And it was, this is not breaking news type stories or anything. It's like, hey, Bob, why are you going to Zillow? What are you going to do? Who's going to take your place at the MLS? That type of stuff. And usually whenever I wrote anything, not usually, every time I wrote something about Zillow, I would get a message from Spencer Raskoff, the CEO, just thanking me for writing the article. Every single time. Well, I wrote this article about Bob and never heard anything from Spencer. And that's not why I wrote the article. I didn't even realize that he had never contacted me. And then it was probably 6 or 8 weeks after Bob got hired, I get this direct message. I'm sitting on my laptop and a direct message on Twitter pops up, and it's Spencer Raskoff, who's the CEO at Zillow. And he says, I feel bad because I never thanked you for that great article about Bob, so thanks. And I messaged him back and said, Spencer, don't worry about it. You're kind of a busy guy. You're not here to thank me for writing an article. And he replied and said, you should come to Seattle and join the fun. And I looked over at my wife. She was sitting at her desk right next to me. I'm like, what does that mean? I should come to Seattle and join the fun. And she said, it sounds like he wants you to work for Zillow. And so I messaged him back. This is on Twitter private message. I said, don't tempt me with a little smiley face. And I swear to God, like 10 minutes later, the phone rang and I picked it up and it's Spencer's admin. And she said, hi, this is whoever it was at the time. I don't remember. She said, Spencer wants to bring you up to Seattle just to talk to you. Can you do that? We'll pay for the flight, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, sure. Why wouldn't I go talk to Spencer? They're going to fly me to Seattle. I'll go talk to him. So I said, sure. When does he want to do this? And she's like, how about Monday? And this is like a Thursday or something. I'm like, okay, I can, yeah, whatever. So everything happens. I land in Seattle. I go to the Zillow offices thinking I'm just going to sit and have a conversation with Spencer. And out walks this HR person and she hands me a piece of paper and goes, here's your schedule. Just sit over there. And I look at this piece of paper and I've got 8 or 9 interviews lined up with one with the co-founder, a bunch of VPs. And I'm like, this is an interview schedule for a job that I don't even know what the job is. So I'm like, this is going to be interesting. And I sat in a conference room and
good thing you were prepared.
Yeah, exactly. Sat in a conference room and these people came in and out all day long. I got a tour of the office facility, which I immediately fell in love with because I'm a big nerd at heart, right? You know that I'm a wannabe tech guy. So when you're walking around the Zillow offices, it was just, it was nerd nirvana. And I talked to everybody. Probably the most intimidating interview was the co-founder who I'd never met personally. I just knew him by name. Lloyd Frank was one of the 2 co-founders of Zillow. He came in and we just had a talk and it was weird. And I remember telling him that I couldn't imagine going to work for a corporation. And then he left the room. I thought, well, shit, that wasn't a good thing to say. I just told the co-founder I didn't want to work at any company. But apparently it worked out all right. Within a couple of weeks, I got an offer from Zillow and I'm like, I looked at my wife. I said, I really want to do this. I love the company. The people are amazing. Some of the smartest people on the planet. I think I'm a pretty bright guy, and I would sit in meetings at Zillow and just like, okay, I'm just going to sit in the corner of the room. You guys are on a whole different plane of intelligence, right, over me. I'm just going to absorb it. Don't call on me for answers. But it worked out. It was hard. It was like, okay, we've got this successful brokerage in Phoenix. Zillow is in Seattle. What are we going to do with the brokerage? And we had this grand plan. My daughter was graduating from high school and going to go to Arizona State University, which is in a suburb of Phoenix. So we thought, my wife Francie will stay in Arizona and run the brokerage while our daughter finishes up ASU, and then we'll figure out what to do after she graduates. And that lasted about 6 months, and it sucked because I adore my wife, and for whatever reason she adores me. And it was like having a long distance relationship. I mean, we saw each other a lot because I traveled a lot, and I'd bring her up to Seattle and I would fly through Phoenix to go to events and stuff. But it was no fun. So he said, well, now what are we going to do? We're 6 months into the Zillow thing. The brokerage is really just kind of, we got to do something with it. And we thought we can shut it down, we can sell it, or we can merge it. Those are kind of our 3 options. And literally within just a couple of weeks after having that conversation with my wife, we still hadn't decided what to do. Glenn Sanford from eXp Realty approached me, who I'd met through the blog a couple years before that at some conference.
It's that guy as well.
Yeah, he's a nerd at heart. I always connected real well with Glenn. And his brokerage, eXp at the time, super small at the time, but their model was very similar to my independent brokerage's model, that being the main part being no physical brick and mortar space. So I thought, you know what, Glenn's a good guy. This is a good match. For my agents, I think it's a good match because of the similarities. So we merged our brokerage with eXp, and that took all the brokerage stuff off my wife's plate. So she was able to move to Seattle, and we became a couple again, and everything worked out. So yeah, basically the whole Zillow thing started with a Twitter direct message from Spencer Raskoff, and here it is. That was over 7 years ago.
That crazy Twitter thing. That isn't going to do
crazy
any...
Twitter thing, and the blog thing. So that blog 100% allowed me to open my brokerage, and it got me that job at Zillow. I never would have been on Zillow's radar if it wouldn't have been for the blog. So I owe it all to the Phoenix real estate guy.
See, and I think that's one of the things is just being out there, making yourself out there, whether you're a real estate agent, being out in your community, whatever it is being out there so people just know you exist.
Yep.
And if you're good at what you do, they will notice. Like Steve Martin, be so good that they can't ignore you.
Right. Exactly. It works. It works for everything.
So you had, well, and we'll talk a little bit more about your job at Zillow, but before that, you did an Ignite class or Ignite presentation about the wonders of fast food.
Yes.
What was that, the gist of that conversation, that first Ignite?
Ignite's a fascinating thing. It's this format is super interesting. It's a 5-minute speech, kind of like a TED Talk, but you have a slide deck, and the slides are presented every 20 seconds, timed, whether you're ready for them to move on or not. So it's a fascinating format. And Phoenix has a really cool Ignite community. So I did this. You're supposed to talk about what you're passionate about, and I knew I wanted to do an Ignite presentation just because I like to speak, and I really thought the format was cool. So I was talking to somebody, Bill Risser, who's a big title guy, has a big podcast back in the day, and he said, we were talking about going to McDonald's. We both like fast food. And he said, dude, you should do an Ignite thing on the wonders of fast food. And I'm like, I can do that. And I think the title of it was Better Living Through Fast Food. And I thought it was an amazing talk. It was really well received. It's an audience of like 900 people. It's kind of intimidating. Wow. And you're at this kind of fancy theater, but I delivered it. And it was kind of just, fast food is amazing because you can go anywhere on the planet and it tastes the same, so it's consistent, it's cheap. And I had slides of food, and it was just a really well-received talk. And I love fast food. I worked at McDonald's when I was a kid for 3 years, which is an eternity to work at McDonald's. And I loved everything about fast food, and I know where you're going with this, because a year later, I had to do a different Ignite talk on kind of the after effects of eating too much fast food.
So one night at Jack in the Box, you want to give that story? So this is how many months after your Ignite talk?
It's right around a year.
So
somewhere around a year in. I flew from Seattle to Phoenix as I was working at Zillow, flew to Seattle. I was going to take pictures on a Saturday of my daughter's senior prom pictures, because I'm an amateur photographer. So I flew to Seattle to do that. When I landed in Seattle Friday night, I swung by Jack in the Box, where the idiot in front of me was ordered like 80 tacos. And I'm like, really? And I tweeted that. I said, the guy in front of me just ordered 60 tacos from Jack in the Box. It's like 2 o'clock in the morning. They were all drunk. But I got my food, and then I went home and I ate it. And that Saturday morning, April 12th, 2012, I woke up, sat down at my computer, and got hit in the chest with these really horrible chest pains. And I thought, wow, I'm having a heart attack. This can't be possible. I'm 51 years old. And to make a long story short, I was having a heart attack. I got 3 cardiac stents placed. The doctor told me that if I'd waited 20 minutes to call 911, I'd be dead. And I had to make some changes because, again, 51 years old is way too young to be having a heart attack. So I had to make some lifestyle changes. I needed to lose weight, stop smoking, exercise, all the stuff that I wasn't doing. I was a walking heart attack before that. So that's what happened.
Did your life pass before your eyes?
It didn't, but if you read about heart attacks, they talk about one of the symptoms is called in the medical papers, they call it an impending sense of doom. And that, if you read about that, you go, what does that mean? You have an impending sense of doom. Well, now I know, because the life didn't flash in front of my eyes, but I was fully convinced during the heart attack that I was going to die. I was looking at my kids and my wife, and I'm trying to be all strong. So, they're wheeling me off to the cath lab, and I'm like, I'll see y'all later. And in my head, I'm like, I'm not coming back. They're not wheeling me out of this. I'm going to die on that operating table. Wow. It was a horrible feeling. But just, there's this cloud, this impending sense of doom. It's overwhelming. It's bizarre. I don't recommend it for anybody.
Well, I was going to say, if your life did pass by, did you happen to see that Ignite talk again while you did the?
It's one of the first things I thought about. I literally, like the
Really?
next day, I was like, yeah, better living through fast food. Well, what a load of crap that was. And that was basically the first line of the second Ignite presentation. I'm like,
So,
that was Ignite 13. And I walked on stage. I said, who was here for Ignite 10? And a bunch of people were like, yeah. I said, yeah, that was a load of crap. Fast food. I mean, how ridiculous is that? I still, to this day, love fast food, and I eat it occasionally. But when I was in the hospital for the heart attack, this dietitian asked me, she said, we need to talk about your diet. She said, how often do you eat fast food? I said, like, how many times she goes, how many times a month? And I'm like, well, let's see, 7 days in a week. So it's at least once a day. And she's just like, stop. She goes, you eat fast food every day? I'm like, almost every day, sometimes twice a day. And she's like, you can't do that. You just can't do that. And she's like, how about sodas, Coca-Cola? And I'm like, I have a Dr. Pepper problem. When I wake up in the morning, the first thing I do, most people wake up, go to the coffee pot, make a cup of coffee. I wake up, go to the refrigerator, get a Dr. Pepper, literally open the Dr. Pepper while the refrigerator's door is open. I drink it, and then I grab my second Dr. Pepper and go sit down. That's what I used to do. And the dietitian's like, she's like, so how many sodas a day do you drink? And I'm like, 6 or 8. And she goes, you drink diet, right? I'm like, nope. And she's like, you drink 6 to 8 sugar-filled sodas every day. I have a vanilla Pepsi right now, but this is the only one I'm going to drink all day long, as opposed to drinking 6 or 8. So yeah, the dietitian basically lit a fire under me and said, you know what? She goes, I don't know why you're not diabetic and dead. And you did almost die, so you got to straighten yourself up. So I did.
So there was an article, I think from Fast Company or something, called Change or Die.
Mm-hmm.
And they said that if someone goes through an event like you went through, within 6 months, 90% of the people go back to where they were.
Yep.
I may not have sent that to you way back when.
You did send that to me, because I remember that. In fact, I was trying to figure out when we became Facebook friends, which is 2010, by the way.
Oh.
And that came up, the link that you sent that, and it was spot on, and that lined up exactly with what my cardiologist told me when he's talking through my medications. He said 50% of his patients are non-compliant with their heart meds. Half of his patients won't take their heart medications. And he's like, I get it. He goes, I understand it. It's a pain in the ass. Nobody wants to have to take a pill every day. But there's 4 little pills. It takes 5 seconds to take them, and they will save your life, or they'll kill you if you don't take them. But yeah, half the people don't comply with their meds, and that's exercise, diet. And I had the same issue. I lost a lot of weight in the beginning. Having a heart attack is a really good motivator. Seeing the look on your kids' faces when they wheel you away is a hell of a motivator. But again, human nature, we tend to fall back to what's easy, and it's hard. It's hard to change your diet and your lifestyle and exercise every day, especially when you didn't do any of that stuff before. So I lost a ton of weight that I needed to, but I slipped. The weight started to slowly add back on, and I reeled myself back in and get back on the plan. It's tough. Changing your lifestyle is not easy, especially when you're 50 years old, because your habits are set. But the alternative is not good. So that's what keeps me going. But yeah, it's crazy how many people don't comply with med, diet, exercise type things, even after they've had a heart attack. It's nuts. What happens?
I've been a director of sales for our team for 4.5 years now. And so I've had a lot of people that, working with them, helping with trying to get them. And I've really got to see that difficulty in changing. I know what it is for myself, but then seeing it, where you're really just working with human beings, and man, change is hard.
Change is hard. It's really, really hard.
And the older you get, I think the harder it is.
Yep.
I've been like this forever.
Exactly.
One of the, I pulled up your website, now pondering, and one of the background images is my favorite image. It's not showing right now, but with you at the starting line at the race with the cast on. You
Yes.
were really inspiring to me to see that, some people can make that change, because I saw that you were doing all those walks.
Mhm.
You were putting in you're
Oh,
putting a
uh,
bunch of miles a day.
uh, 10 miles a day sometimes, easily. I mean, my average was, I think, 6 or 7 miles a day, every day. And it was mostly walking. I tried running. I got terrible knees. But that picture was me lined up at the start of the rock and roll marathon. And I did a full 26.2 mile marathon. Now, it depends on how you define did a marathon. I was slow. I'm not going to win any races. It took me over 6 hours to finish the thing. But um, when I had the heart attack, somebody, it might have been my cardiologist, I don't remember who, said set a like a reach out goal, something that'll really make you stretch and reach, to do something. And the thought and idea of running a marathon is always fascinated me. I think it's an amazing accomplishment for a human being to run 26 miles. Heck, I don't like to drive 26 miles, and to run it. And you look at the map and you think, oh my God, I've got to run this thing that takes me, 2 hours to drive. So I did it and I trained for it. And that was my goal, was to finish the marathon. I thought, you know what, if it takes me 12 freaking hours, I'm going to finish that marathon. If I have to crawl across the finish line, that's what I'm going to do. And I made it standing up, but, and I'd fallen, I tripped up the stairs while I was on my phone weeks before that and
That's
broke my
right.
wrist. That's why I had the cast on. So not only am I trying to finish a full marathon, I'm doing it in a cast that's up to my elbow, which was horribly uncomfortable. I had a chopstick attached to the cast so I could reach down and scratch my arm during the race. It was terrible. But I finished that thing, and it's still to this day is one of those accomplishments that I'm incredibly proud of. I will never do another full marathon, um, because it's excruciating. It's painful. And it takes so long to train for it. I mean, I'm slow. So if I need to do a 20-mile training run, I've got to carve out 4 or 5 hours of the day to do that and get that done. It just takes a lot of time. The half marathon, 13.1 miles, much easier to train for, still challenging. So I haven't done a half in a couple of years, but I've done 5 or 6 half marathons since. And if you knew me before the heart attack, and you think this dude's going to finish a full marathon and then start doing a bunch of half marathons, there's no freaking way. But I did it, and it felt amazing to do that. And I still look back on that picture and the memories of running that race or running the race. Um, but I think having that goal again, that reach out goal of finishing the marathon, was a big thing that helped drive me through the whole weight loss and exercise regime.
So you ended up at Zillow.
Yeah.
And what did you do there?
I was their director of industry outreach, which is kind of exactly what it sounds like. Zillow hired me basically for 2 main reasons. One, because I was a broker and an agent. They wanted me to kind of act as a liaison between the broker agent community and Zillow. So that was part of the job. And then internally at Zillow, again, I said earlier, they have really, really smart people that work there, but the workforce is crazy young. Young to the point where a lot of the developers and things like, people that are working on the app and the website have never bought or sold a home. Many of them have never even spoken to a real estate agent. They can develop and code anything, right? They can make an app do anything, but they didn't have a good understanding of what agents and brokers need that app to do. So Zillow wanted a little internal guidance and direction on, how do brokers and agents think? How do they work? What do they need from Zillow to make their jobs and lives easier? So that was my favorite part of the job. It fed the nerd in me, because the developers would come up with the phone and they go, look what we made the app do. Isn't it cool? And I'd be like, oh, that's really cool, but it's completely useless from a broker agent perspective. Now, if it could do this or that, then you might be onto something. They'd go, okay, we can make that happen. They'd run off and do whatever it is developers do behind closed doors. And, they didn't listen to every word I said. Every suggestion wasn't incorporated, of course, but there's no doubt that Zillow listened. I think they learned a lot about the industry and how the industry works from my experience in being there. So it was a fun ride. It was a really fun ride.
You speak now and you talk about, reputation management and all that. So what did you learn there, and how you did that to how does it apply to agents and being on social media and not causing problems
Yes.
for ourselves?
The thing about the internet is, and I say it a lot, is the internet never forgets, right? It is a permanent record of everything you say and do. And people seem to forget that real estate is a reputation based business, right? It is still, I don't care how much technology you layer on top of it, real estate fundamentally is a people business. It's belly to belly, it's handshake. Yeah, you have to have all the legal crap behind it, but you get business in real estate because people like you. Ultimately, that's what it boils down to.
Yeah.
And the internet is a great platform for getting your personality out there. That's the reason that the Phoenix Real Estate Guy blog worked as well as it did, is it got my personality and my aptitude and my attitude out there on the internet. But it's a double-edged sword, right? Where the internet's really good at delivering good messages, it's also really good at delivering bad messages. It's just good at delivering messages. It doesn't discern whether it's good for your reputation or bad for it. I think your reputation in real estate is everything. And I would watch as I worked at Zillow, and I'm monitoring social media sites and Facebook groups, and I'm kind of the face and the voice of Zillow to a lot of people. So I can't say some of the things that I want to say to people because first of all, it's not effective. And second of all, I'll get fired and I need my job. But I learned a lot about how to behave and how to act on the internet when you're basically in effect a public figure. Yeah, you may be the agent that's in Ottumwa, Iowa, selling 8 houses a year, but what you say and put on the internet is everything. And again, the internet never forgets. So I saw so many agents that said things on the internet that they just shouldn't have said out loud. And the internet, inside and outside of real estate, the internet is littered with stories of reputations being destroyed over stupid stuff in minutes, right? It doesn't take very long. Back in the 1700s, Ben Franklin talked about how long it took to build a reputation and how
Mm.
quickly it could be destroyed. Okay, this is Ben Franklin, like 1760, talked about how fast you can lose your reputation. And so take that and amplify it by a bazillion, and that's what social media can do, right? I mean, social media can crush you overnight. And it's sad when that happens, and we've all seen it happen. Again, inside and outside of real estate, there's all kinds of stories out there. So, the gist of reputation management for me is to remember the internet never forgets that whatever you say or do will be there forever. And forever is a really long time. And then it boils down to the golden rule, right? It's that simple. Just do unto others, right? Treat people how you want to be treated. Act like you want to be acted at. It's not hard, but it's just really easy for agents to forget. They get lost, they're passionate, and so they go in these Facebook groups and they pound the keyboard and they click send, and they don't stop and think, what are the potential ramifications of what I just said to everybody? And you need to do that. This is a reputation business. If you worked as I don't know, at a drive-through at McDonald's, you really doesn't really matter how you act today and tomorrow. But when your job is based so much on your reputation, and that reputation precedes you, you've got to be really careful how you act on the internet. And some people are super careless. So I don't know if they don't think, they don't care. I don't know what it is.
I have a list of like 15 real estate traps, and one of them is a lot of people get into this business thinking they're going to battle other agents. Mm-hmm. And that reputation, example I have is there's someone that I worked with in an office. I didn't even mean to say the gender, but rude, crass, mm-hmm. just difficult. Wrote the offer. The offer was already starting to be problematic. And I was like, man, I don't want to work with this agent. And so I did what I do when I write a counter offer. If I don't want to work with that person, or I'm hoping for a better offer, I do a really long response. Mm-hmm. So if they're not in a hurry, I'm not in a hurry, great. And it worked out. Someone else came in and they were $750 less. That's it. And I told my client, I said, I guarantee you this offer is better because of that agent's reputation.
Yep.
And that agent did not realize, doesn't even begin to realize how they are affecting other people around them. They
Right.
think everyone likes them or whatever, or
Yep.
they're, the fighter, whatever. People are like, no. And I've seen deals get done because agents trusted each other.
Yep. 100%. 100%. There's someone that will be unnamed, has been in lots of Facebook groups. Lots of people know them. And I remember this was years ago. One time they said something. They're like, there was a thread. People were talking about getting referrals. And this person went in and they said, I've never gotten a referral from anything on social media. No Facebook, no Twitter, nothing. And I wanted to say, I don't want people to take this wrong, but I want to say, well, that's because you're a raving bitch, okay? And that can be a male or a female term, the way I'm using it. You're just not a nice person. And that comes through with everything they said and did on the internet. And of course you're not getting referrals because people are seeing the real you and they don't want to work with you. That's the reputation thing. You've got to, I don't want people to be fake and have a reputation, but you've just got to understand the scope and the power that the internet has and the permanence that it has and the reach that it's got. You can say one thing in one Facebook group one time, and if you say it the wrong way, you can lose business from it, or you can gain business from it. I have a list. I have 2 lists that I've kept for years, and started when I was a broker, and it was, at the time, it was one of the lists was titled "Never Hire This Agent," and I had 10 or 15 or 20 people on it. They were local, and you got yourself on the never hire list by being a jerk on the internet. That was the fundamental easiest way to get yourself on the list. There was a corresponding list of try to hire this person tomorrow. So you have the good list and the bad list. Everybody's got it or should have it. Why would you want to be on the bad list if you don't have to be, right? When it's really not that hard to stay off the bad list. And honestly, it's not that hard to get on the good list. The people that go on the good list, people that respond, people that are nice, people that are smart, and people that are friendly. Okay, that's all you have to do to get on the hire now list. And all you have to do to get on the never hire list is be a jerk. So don't be a jerk. It's not that hard.
And when you're the jerk, that sits with people so much more than positive.
Oh,
If
100%.
you look at reviews, you remember the bad experiences you had at a restaurant or whatever more than you remember, oh, that steak was really good.
Yep.
And that hits, and then you're in the office or you're talking to another agent. Oh yeah, I've gotten offered by whoever. Ooh, them.
Yeah.
Be careful. Be careful. Like, what's going on? And then it just sets the whole thing up.
Yep.
I swear, the agent who writes the offer and says, "I'm easy to work with." Now, why did that come up? What has happened that you even thought that you had to say that?
Exactly. That should just be a standard, right? You better be. Of course, you're easy to work with. You shouldn't have to say that.
And that going along with that battle is what I try to get across to agents is that you have a goal. Your goal is not to win on your side for, to battle and show, I got this or that. Your client wants a house.
Yep.
And so often it's, we wrote an offer. Here's our counter offer. Here's my clients. You're an agent. Yep. You just have a common goal. And, the owner of the team, I've heard him say, yeah, it's my fault. Now what? And I was like, what are you doing? Don't say it's your fault. It's not your fault. He just gets a goal. Sure. Whatever. I made the mistake. Now, how do we get this deal closed? Taking that.
Yep.
How do, and you brought up authenticity, which is something I wanted to mention is like, there's some people who go, well, I am this person if, and I have opinions and I have whatever. And, there's one guy I want to interview later who is very political. And I do know that, if you cast your flag of wherever you are, you'll get more people like that around you. And you'll be the draw when you have that. So where do you, working with Zillow is one thing because that's a company and you have to control the message and make sure that things don't get a little out of hand. But then as yourself, how do I have my opinions and not go too far? Or is it just about not being a jerk?
Yeah, that's a great question, and it's super hard because I am very opinionated. I am an open book, and I've said that and demonstrated it countless times. I'm not afraid to say whatever I feel on the internet, and I've said some. Believe me, of course, I've said some stupid things, and we all have. That's a really tough. It's a really good question, and it's a really hard line to walk. First of all, the line is super fuzzy, right? I mean, what's right and what's wrong? Politics always comes up, especially it's an election year, and it's so polarizing. And I've talked to lots of people too, and they're like, whatever side of the aisle they're on, it doesn't matter. If you're way off to an extreme of left or right, it doesn't really matter. It's who you are. And I've talked to people that said, well, you know what? If someone has a problem because I support Trump or I support Clinton or I support Bozo, whoever it is, then I don't want to work with them anyway. And that may very well be true, but you still got to balance the fact that your reputation is hanging out there. And do you really want, let's just focus on politics. The bottom line with politics is no matter where you stand, there's half the population that disagrees with you, right? Whether you're right, left, center. I mean, that's just the way politics works. You're here, you say something, you either excite or piss off half of the audience. And it puts people in a tough spot. It's real easy to say, just don't ever talk about politics on your Facebook page or don't tweet politics. No, but people are going to. I had that personal goal to never talk politics, and I let loose one time. It was almost 4 years ago now in the 2016 presidential election. And I wish I'd never done it because it kind of opened that door of putting politics out there. And I do some consulting with people on reputation management, and they ask that, well, should I talk about politics and abortion and the death penalty and gun control, these volatile topics? And the easy answer is like, just don't talk about them. The real answer is you're going to talk about them because you're a human being. You're just going to have to, it really does boil down to don't be a jerk. Okay. I have my political feelings and leanings, and I have some good, amazing friends that are 180 degrees different from me politically, that I would take a bullet for, and they would take a bullet for me. You can do that. You can disagree in a civil way, by not being an ass, right? Don't name call. Don't throw people under the bus. Don't have a superior attitude. Don't think that it's your way or the highway and that's the only way. Have an open mind. Yeah, you're never going to change people. There's a pie chart out there that it's kind of funny. It's like there's a one little tiny color of arguments on the internet, and the big giant chunk of the pie is you're not going to change anybody's mind, and you're going to piss everybody off. You just are. But so that's what I tell people. I say, you know what, you're going to talk about this stuff if you're a human being, but you can do it without being a jackass or being dominating. The bottom line, I think, is to realize, don't be a jerk. Understand that people have different opinions, and you can share those opinions in a civil manner and I think you're okay. People are going to clearly know by election day 2016, people are going to know which side I'm voting for. And I think I can get that message out without annoying the other side to the point where they'll say, I'll never work with that person. You have to be careful. But bottom line, yeah, just don't be a jerk.
I think I came up with a new rule. Comment as if you're going to see that person in 5 minutes.
That's a really good guideline. That's a super good guideline. There's that whole statement or the kind of thing, philosophy of people hiding behind a keyboard. It's really easy to do. There are people that said things to me when I worked at Zillow that I guarantee you they would have never said to me in person.
Yeah.
Or if they'd have met me 5 minutes later, they would have been horrified because of what they'd said. That's a really good guideline. I like that. Write something like you're going to meet them in face to face in 5 minutes. That's a good guideline. And if you can do that, there's kind of the one too, don't write anything that you wouldn't want your mother to read or your grandmother to read. All those kind of cliche kind of things really do work. I can have a political debate with somebody that I would be very proud to have my mom read. I can also have a political debate that I would be horrified if my mother read it. So just, do the debate that you want mom to read. I like that though. Mom, would you want your mom to read it? Would you say it to their face in 5 minutes? Those are all good. And if you follow those types of guidelines, I think you'll be fine.
There's a video where there's dogs barking at each other on either side of a fence, and the camera pulls back and it's just a gate that's not connected to, it's just open on the other side.
Yep.
And then the dogs kind of walk around. They're like, oh, hey. That's what a lot of this is. So
that's a great one.
there, and the guy that I want to interview, he posted something on Facebook, and he basically said, something about some quote from someone about the fact that we cannot civilly speak about politics and just have a civil discourse.
Yep.
Because obviously we want to talk about this. This is why it happens. And I do not like the idea of an echo chamber. I get tempted, but I don't unfollow anyone that's just that far away from my opinion. I want to hear what that is. And I'd love to have that discussion, but because of what it derails to and people take it personally.
Yep.
I love what social media has done. I wouldn't know you if it wasn't for social media. I wouldn't know Dale Chumbley. There's so many people I wouldn't know because of social media. And I love that it's given us this ability to see these ideas, but it's also just given us a little bit too much power to just go, you know what, you're an idiot or whatever, you're stupid. And and our brains shut off the second we go, you're right, you're wrong, and I'm right.
Exactly. Then all reasonable thought goes out the window.
So you worked for Zillow for a while, and then you made a surprise announcement you're retiring.
Yes.
Did you know you were thinking about that soon, or it seemed like it was more a surprise to you as well that you were deciding to do that?
It was a little bit. I mean, it's something that my wife and I had talked about for a long time, and we had a financial planner that we worked with for ages, and just kind of the planets all aligned the right way and allowed it to happen. So it was kind of a surprise, but not really. I know it was a surprise to virtually everybody. Well, it was a surprise to my family, so it was a surprise to everybody because it's not something that we talked about beforehand. I mean, I said just a few minutes ago, I'm an open book and I'll say anything. Personal finances is probably the one place that I steer away from, for probably obvious reasons. I mean, you don't put your personal finances out on the internet. And yeah, it was, a lot of people, when I announced that I was going to retire, people were like, oh, someone finally crossed the line, right? Some Zillow hater finally said something that made Jay lose his mind and he's running away. That's not it. It was nothing really to do with the job. It was nothing to do with my health. As I wrote in the blog post announcing it, it came to a time where I was able to do it, right? 57, 58 years old, that's young. I like to think it's young. Although turning 60 this year is already starting to freak me out. And I don't turn 60 until October, but so it was both a surprise, and I knew that it was probably going to happen within a few years. There was a few things just financially that lined up well that allowed it to happen a couple of years earlier than we thought it would. But it's been a blast. It's been interesting for sure. It's different.
I checked out your website before we got on here, and I love this quote from Jackson Brown. 20 years from now, you'll be more disappointed by the things you didn't do by the ones that you did do. So throw off the bow lines, sail from the safe harbor, catch the trade winds in your sails, explore, dream, discover.
I loved that quote too, because it really summed up. And plus, I love to sail boats, so it has that connection too. But it kind of captured it all. It's like, you know what? At the time I was 57. I'm like, this, if I can do this now while I'm still, I think I wrote in the blog post, while I'm still young and spry enough to move and to do things and to see parts of the world that I've never seen before. I've done, for a year, I did some hotline work with a national sexual assault hotline that I never could have done while I worked. It was brutal volunteer work, but really rewarding. So being able to do that kind of stuff it's been a gift, and it's been amazing. But the key, if you're going to retire, I have to say that you've got to have something or some things to keep you busy, because you don't want to just sit on the couch with the remote, binge watching one series after another. That's not a way to live.
It sounds like fun, but it's not.
Yeah, it's really not. It gets old really fast. Now, there are times where I'll go sit on the couch and binge watch a Netflix series, but I don't want to do that 7 days a week, 365 days a year.
I'd be remiss if I didn't mention the Beverly Carter Foundation. Mm-hmm. Tell us about that.
Yeah, that was a true honor. I'm on the board of directors for the Beverly Carter Foundation, which is if you've been in the real estate industry more than 5 years, you probably know the name Beverly Carter. She was an
Yeah.
agent in the Little Rock, Arkansas area that went on a showing and got kidnapped and murdered. Tragedy. It was horrible. Her son, Carl Carter, took that awful. Uh, I can't imagine, my mother getting murdered. And like it was so when she was kidnapped, there was ransom notes. They found her in a shallow grave. I mean, it's like really bad crime drama television that happened to this family. Carl, her son, has taken that and embraced it and has gone literally all over the country talking about realtor safety. He founded the Beverly Carter Foundation. That's focusing goal is to spread awareness, mostly for real estate agents. I mean, obviously Beverly Carter had the real estate connection, but it's really turned into more of a lone worker kind of situation. Lone worker being, anybody, real estate agents, CPAs, anybody that's by themselves when they're doing a lot of work, needs to be safety conscious, especially agents. I mean, you think of what agents do and the potential dangers that they have, right?
Yeah.
You're prospecting to strangers, you're meeting strangers, you're showing people, you end up in empty houses alone with people that you've known for 5 minutes. I mean, these are all potential red flags for safety.
Yeah.
And the Beverly Carter Foundation is not saying, every agent needs to be carrying a concealed weapon and blah, blah, blah. It's not that. It's really more of an awareness thing. Hey, there are some really just fundamental things you can do, right? Meet people for the first time in public. Don't meet them at a
Yeah.
listing that's empty. Um, just be cognizant and aware of your situation. Situational awareness, where you're kind of in tune with what's happening around you. Little tips like if you're at an open house, let the person that you're showing the house go up the stairs in front of you, right? So that you always keep a exit behind you. Little things like that. We don't ever want another Beverly Carter situation. And there's been some since she was murdered. It's just awful. Carl does an amazing job. He goes and speaks live and tells the story of his mother, which I don't know how he gets through it without breaking down every time.
Yeah.
But he does. He's an amazing man, and it's an amazing foundation. It's something obviously near and dear to my heart. I remember when I was first an agent, my wife became an agent just a few months after I did. And I remember the first time she was walking out the door, I'm like, "Where are you going?" She goes, "I'm going to meet somebody at a listing." And I'm like, "Who?" And she's like, "This guy, blah, blah, blah." And I'm like, we've been agents for like 3 weeks. And like, we don't know him. What if he's some psycho serial killer? And that's a concern. I mean, it happens. There's bad, evil people out there. I learned, boy, believe me, manning that sexual assault hotline, you learn how dark and evil some people are out there. And I don't want agents to be paranoid or always in fear of their lives, but they need to be aware of the situations that they can be in and just avoid those situations. So being a director of the Beverly Carter Foundation has allowed me it gives me a platform basically to kind of help spread realtor safety awareness, which is important.
It's important because we just, okay, there's a deal. We're always hunting a deal,
Yep.
and that's the thing, anything for a deal.
And I get
But
it
not your life.
No deal is worth that. And it's hard. Being an agent is so hard. Being on 100% commission is not an easy way to make a living. And when you turn down a potential transaction, that is not an easy thing to do. Very few of us are blessed with having so much business that it doesn't matter if we turn something away. But boy, and a lot of people make a lot of assumptions about Beverly Carter. I've heard them now. It's like, oh, she didn't vet the clients. She didn't do this. She didn't do that. She did everything wrong. It's victim blaming for one thing. Okay, it's not Beverly Carter's fault, no matter what she did. But most people don't know everything that she did do right. And she did a lot of the things right. She checked an email address and compared it to phone numbers. Everything looked legit. It was unfortunate. She found two criminals that plotted to make money off of her, and that went south and they killed her. And it's awful, and it can happen just like that. Even if you do all the right things, it can still happen. It's a tough position to be in. It sucks, but yeah, you've got to be aware of it. You got to think about it.
It's rough.
Yeah.
Well, you're retired now. I know let's see, you're selling pictures at a coffee shop last I
Yep.
heard. You're speaking. What kind of speaking do you do?
I'll speak. I like to speak about reputation management because I feel like it's super important, and I think it's underrepresented in the business. About how to monitor your reputation, how to act on the internet. That's kind of my favorite topic. Um, I like to talk about iBuyers because it's a fascinating twist of this industry. That really started. It's my Zillow career ended right at the time that Zillow became an iBuyer, but I've been fascinated by it ever since. I don't actively seek speaking gigs, um, but if they fall in my lap, I'll take them. So I don't need to speak to make a living, um, but I do enjoy it, and it gets me out and gets me uh, some travel, right? Basically. Um, so yeah, I forgot what the rest of the question
Yeah,
was.
that was it. So if someone wants to hear the ponderings of Jay
Mhm.
Thompson and keep up on you, where can they find you?
A couple places. I write a weekly column for Inman News. That's typically behind their paywall. That's kind of Inman's business model, right? It's a news site. They put some things on the free side, but most of their opinion columns, which is what I wrote. So if you have an Inman subscription, you can read my weekly column there. Nowpondering.com is my personal blog that's woefully neglected. Um, I do,
Looks good.
for the people that like the Inman columns, I do sometimes, I'm allowed through my agreement with Inman, I can republish my own content on my blog that's not behind a paywall. So sometimes a few days after I post something on Inman, I'll put it on Now Pondering. My business site is j.life, jay.life. That's my uh, speaking, consulting, writing business site. Again, woefully neglected, but I'm easy to find, or you can find me on Facebook.
You're retired. You don't have to do anything you don't want
Most
to
of the
do.
time, I'm sitting down on the beach, which is like 2 blocks that way.
Really.
Yeah.
So last little part, you lived in Phoenix where your skin will boil in the summer.
Yep.
And then you're in Seattle where your skin will never boil. It'll be well hydrated. How hard was that to go from no
That is
rain to
like
constant rain?
180 degrees, right? You couldn't find two more different climates. And a lot of people, like, when I was leaving Phoenix, like, really, you're leaving to go to the Northwest where it does nothing but rain? And I'm like, let's have this conversation in August, right? When it's 118 degrees outside in Phoenix. That is freaking hot. And people are like, oh, but it's a dry heat. Well, so is your kitchen oven, right? I mean, if you ever bake something and you open the kitchen oven, it's been
Yeah.
set at 450 and you get that blast of, that's what it's like walking out your front door in Phoenix 8 months out of the year. It's so insufferably hot. Um, but I mean, I have tons of friends in Phoenix and I liked it, but I love the Pacific Northwest most of the time. This is the time of year where I get a little of that sad seasonal affective disorder because,
Mm-hmm.
well, I mean, you're just down
I'm
the
in
road.
Portland. Yeah.
It's the gray that gets me more than the wet. I need to see the blue sky and the fiery orb, right? I need vitamin D. And I'm sorry, but getting a little lamp that gives out UV and then turning it on my desk, shining it on my face, is not the same thing as sunshine. It's just not. So this is the time of year, January, February, I struggle. My wife has no problem with it all, but she was born and raised in Phoenix, so she was ready to get the hell out of there.
Huh.
People say, well, how does a lifelong Phoenician deal with the rain? My wife goes out and plays in it, right? It's something different to her. In a couple of years, she may see it differently, but this winter has seemed to be particularly brutal, at least to me. I know from a meteorologic weather definition, um, of sunny days. There's been 3 sunny days in
I saw
Seattle
that
since
post.
November 1st. 3.5 months, and there's only been 3 sunny days. It's crazy. So I get a little stir crazy this time of the year. But again, being retired makes that nice. We're going on a Caribbean cruise at the end of the month. That'll get me out of the gray and get me some recharged vitamin D, and I'll be good to go for the rest of the year.
Just don't get that coronavirus ship.
No, it's crazy stuff.
Well, cool. Well, thank you so much for taking the time. We'll have to talk. I just scrolled down. I forgot about that discrimination. We'll have some more time. like to talk
We
about
should do it
that.
again for sure. I think that's a super important topic that needs to be discussed too. But this has been a blast. Let's do it again.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Well, thanks.
You bet. Thanks for having me.